Today, we are celebrating Independence Day, day after the 4th of July. And we live in one of the most wonderful nations in the world, filled with many freedoms. Sometimes on the 4th of July weekend, I like to go through the Bill of Rights. The first one is the freedom of religion, speech, and press. Number 2, the right to bear arms. I like to make a joke and roll up my sleeves. The right to not be forced to house soldiers in peacetime. The protection from unreasonable searches and seizures is number 4. The protection of rights to life, liberty, and property. The rights of the accused persons in criminal cases. And then number 7 is the rights in civil cases. The rights in number 8 from excessive bail, fines, and punishments. And then it says other rights are kept by the people. And then anything that isn't spelled out in the Constitution of the United States is delegated to the states and to the people and local municipalities. Bill of Rights. I want to talk a little bit before we get into our scripture about the First Amendment. The freedom of religion, speech, and press. Now, we should add another one on there. This is part of the First Amendment. The right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. One of the observations I make is that as we have a Bill of Rights, one amendment does not displace another amendment. And sometimes when we get into the media of what's going on lately, the First Amendment seems to be the highlight, and the right of the people of the United States to peacefully assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances. And so there were protests all over the United States, in every city, particularly here in Los Angeles. One of the things that caught my attention was an incident that took place on the 31st of May in Minneapolis. There was a tanker truck that on the 31st, all the media all over the world said, this guy is the worst guy ever. He was trying to mow down these protesters. He must be racist, and all kinds of negative things were said about this guy. He was put into jail. He was arrested. One of the things that I observed as I was looking at the video on this, the guy was honking his horn. I said, why is he doing that? And then finally, when he came to a stop, all the mob got out and broke in his windows, drug him out, beat him to death. Unfortunately, someone intervened to keep him from being beaten to death. His name was Bogdan Verchenko. And he was driving a tanker truck. Now, a couple days later, he was released from jail. And there was all kinds of protests and said, how come this man is being released, this terrorist, domestic terrorist? And the police said, because we don't think he intended to hit anyone, and he didn't. And people condemned this as all kinds of duplicity by the police. But as you got to looking at this closely, you could see that Bogdan was doing what he did every day and dropping off a load of fuel at a gas station and then getting on the freeway off-ramp and going to the next stop. He wasn't racist, but it was amazing how the freedom of speech here got it wrong. The freedom of press got it wrong. And I bring this up because I want to talk about the Christian attitude towards our First Amendment rights. In the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 7, Jesus said, "So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets." So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. The golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And this, I believe, should be our Christian way of life, and it should temper our freedom of speech, our tolerance of other religions, our freedom of press, and then our freedom and right of the people to peacefully assemble. Do unto others, treat other people the way you want to be treated. And that saves us from a lot of abuse. When we begin to do unto others as we'd have them do unto you, one of the areas has to do with speech. Jesus earlier in the Sermon on the Mount in chapter 5, verse 21 says, "You have heard that it was said to people long ago, 'You shall not murder, and anyone who murders shall be subject to judgment.' But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be subject to judgment. And again, anyone who says to his brother or sister, 'Raca, you empty-headed fool,' is answerable to the Supreme Court. And any one of you who says, 'You fool,' will be in danger of the fire of hell." Now, that's pretty serious stuff that Jesus was saying. You know, we know how we want people to talk to us, like we are reasonable people. We don't want people to condemn us, especially for things we didn't do. And that we have a respectful confrontation. That we know how we want to be treated. And Jesus says you got to practice treating other people the way you want to be treated. You got to practice talking to other people the way you want to be talked to. You know, I find myself sometimes being too directive and too harsh and too straightforward in my speech and not thinking through how this person will receive what I'm saying. I remember one time in a speech course, the professor was saying to me, communication is like two sovereign nations. One is a nation that produces bananas, and another is a nation that produces peanut butter. And the idea is you want to get all your bananas loaded up in banana boats and shipped into the harbor of the place that produces the peanuts and the peanut butter, and for them to load up their ships and have good commerce. And what oftentimes happens, he would say, is that people will be saying harsh things to one another, and it becomes like an act of war, and the bananas sit rotting in your port, and the peanut butter sits rotting in the other port, and they're just shooting at one another. The idea is get them to receive what you're saying and listen to what they are saying. I remember saying to someone one time when they were shouting at someone, I said, stop shouting, they're not listening. And sometimes people get going and they get caught up in what they're saying and what they're doing and what they're thinking, not realizing the other person isn't receiving anything. Jesus said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Talk to others the way you want to be talked to. And Jesus got pretty strong there. He says, he compared getting angry with a person and staying angry and talking angry almost to the point of like murder. You treat a person with contempt. And somehow we need to learn as Christians to talk to one another with respect. We may be firm. You know, if you're telling your child to do the homework, you may have to repeat it several times and be firm, but still be able to do it with respect. So Jesus also went on to say that when we're doing unto other people the way we would have them do unto us, we treat other people the way we want to be treated. No, the negative of that, by the way, is don't do anything to someone else you wouldn't want done to you. But the positive is do unto others, and that becomes a hallmark of being a Christian. If you live your life that way, that is the golden rule that Jesus taught. And when we apply that to our First Amendment rights and the Bill of Rights and all the things we have in our freedoms, then that keeps our freedom from running over the rights and freedoms of other people. Because we treat them with respect, we speak to them with respect. And so that's my message today, is that we take Jesus' principle, the golden rule, and we apply this to all of our political rights and human rights and celebrate our independence in a responsible way, in a Christian way. Now, Cindy is going to lead us in some hymns and songs of worship. So please join in as we continue the celebration of independence.